she was wealthy. She was a local celebrity, and she appeared in our living rooms every evening for years. And then she got breast cancer. This was 1992, when it was not popular to talk about breast cancer, much less admit that you had breast cancer. What this woman would go on to do would not only change the landscape here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but would spread across the United States and now internationally. Welcome to the Recovery Room podcast. If you or someone you care for has been affected by breast cancer, this will be an important episode for you. Today, I am sharing with you information on the incredible nonprofit organization ABCD, After Breast Cancer Diagnosis, and its founder, Melody Wilson Oldenburg, who at the time of her diagnosis was an Emmy-winning broadcast journalist. I will put in the show notes the website, abcdbreastcancersupport.org, our phone number, 800-977-4121, and email address, info@abcdmentor.org. If you want to learn more about ABCD, become a participant or become a mentor. This is the Recovery Room podcast, discussing all things cancer and cancer recovery. We bring you the experts, accuracy, understanding, and next steps you need to be healthier, more confident, make better decisions, and of course, live your best life after cancer. Thank you again for joining me. I am excited to introduce you to ABCD's Executive Director, Ellen Freibert-Schupper, as we talk about the incredible free emotional support services that ABCD provides. Because, to quote Melody Wilson, no one should go through breast cancer alone. I welcome to the Recovery Room podcast, Ellen Freibert-Schupper, our Executive Director. Hello, Ellen. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you?
I am well. So I was actually on the original board of directors back in 1998, 99, when Melody started this programming. I was on the board for many years, then stepped away because life got busy. And then I met you and you became executive director. And I'm like, I need to get back on board with this group because I was very impressed by you. So glad to have you here. Thanks for being here. So I gave our folks just a bit of a background on the founding story, but can you tell us a little bit more about the actual founding story of what happened to Melody and why she founded ABCD?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to join this podcast. And I mean, you definitely hit the highlights of the story. I would just add on a few details. So you're right. In 1992, when Melody was diagnosed with breast cancer, she did something very brave. Which was use a moment of time on her nightly broadcast. So let me just, so she delivered the nightly news every single night. She was on local television here in Milwaukee. And her broadcast signal went, as far out to some, southeastern Wisconsin areas. And she was it. People would turn on the news at night. They would get their information about what had happened during the day. And it was a time when, that 6 to 6:30 or 5 to 5:30 was really important and critical to know what was going on in the community and the nation and the world at large. And so she was the one that people tuned into to get that information. She became this trusted resource for news and also a trusted resource that for people felt very connected to her. And that became very evident. In 1992, when she used a part of her news broadcast to start talking about herself, start talking about this disease that she was diagnosed with, which was breast cancer. And from the stories that I've heard, it was at a time when you didn't talk about cancer, let alone breast cancer. I mean, purposely whispering the word breast because there was a time you didn't talk about body parts, let alone female body parts, over dinner. But she did.
Or much less on the air. On the air. Yeah.
On the air, on live television. I mean, it was just, I can only imagine what that would be. And I've heard stories about this moment and this time when she took that, made that decision to do that. And what ended up happening was something that, she couldn't have anticipated, which was that she would come off of the air, go back to her news desk, and she started receiving phone calls from people all across her broadcast signal that were either offering her support for an issue that she had just discussed, those people calling were people who were breast cancer survivors themselves, who were 1, 2, 10 years out, who could share their insight from their lived experience about whatever the topic was. Or they were calling her because they needed support.
Right.
That Melody was the first person that they knew who ever talked about breast cancer, that they knew that they could talk to about breast cancer. Again, she was that trusted resource. They felt like they could call this broadcast journalist and share, some truths, some potentially very hard truths. So an example, she would talk about how difficult it was to be going through chemotherapy and raising her 4 young kids. Mm-hmm. Or she would talk about how hot she was in her wig that she was wearing on live television. Or she would come back on the air not wearing her wig and how that felt the first time she did that. And those topics, she didn't talk about the medical side of her diagnosis. She talked about the quality of life impact that she was experiencing. So flash forward 7 years, and Melody decided to leave her Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalism career to found this organization where she wanted to figure out how to leverage the experience that she was having of all these people calling to help a greater good.
She really tapped into an unmet need that I don't even really anybody realized at the point that was an unmet need, was this emotional support of, we can explain chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery to you, but those other things that nobody talked about with each other really made people feel alone. And that's one of Melody's favorite quotes that I put at the beginning is no one should go through breast cancer alone. Right. So it was pretty amazing that then it was in 1999 that she founded ABCD as an organization to make sure that people did not feel alone and were getting their emotional support needs met by other people who had walked in their shoes, which is spectacular. Right. So can you tell me technically what is ABCD and then how does it work?
So what Melody knew when she was founding this organization, that she didn't want to connect people just because they had breast cancer and therefore they could help each other. No, that wasn't it. Her idea was that she wanted to create a pool of mentors. And mentors are, and are still now, people who are at least 1 year past their final treatment after being diagnosed with breast cancer, who have been trained and vetted to learn how to provide emotional support. So those are that's a difference in this peer-to-peer support space.
And I will tell you that that's why I really became interested when she talked to me, because I didn't want to just, we didn't want a support groupie kind of thing. It was really training people to listen, training people how to mentor somebody else with cancer. So that's really what pulled me into the organization.
Right. And she had pulled together other healthcare providers and breast cancer survivors and people living with metastatic disease and patients and caregivers and people who are active in the breast cancer community back in the late 90s to say, what is it? What is this gap? What is it that we need? How do we fill this void? And what does that look like? And the outcome is this structure that we still follow today. Back in 1999, she started with 23 mentors. So she had 23 people who went through a training that at that time was in person, and it was, in a conference room, and they were learning together how to provide support. And we've now grown to over 850 mentors around Wisconsin, around the United States. And we have our first mentor who lives in Australia. And so our mentors are the heart of our organization because they are the ones that deliver peer-to-peer support to people who call us and reach out to us. So how it works is that someone is diagnosed with breast cancer. They find out about ABCD either because a nurse navigator gives them one of our pieces of material. They go online and they search for us. They are in a Facebook group and someone says, hey, you should really call ABCD. A family, friend, somehow they find out about us. They then either call us on the phone, they fill out an online form, They fill out, they send us an email, and we then connect to them real time with we have a match specialist. We have 3 match specialists who are on our ABCD team. They then do an intake call with the person who's reached out to us to find out what is most important to them. What is their diagnosis? What do they know about their diagnosis at the time that they call us? Mm-hmm. What are their treatment options, or what treatment are they in? Are they married? Are they divorced? Are they single? Are they 65 and just retired? Are they 42 and just having their 3rd child? Are they in their late 20s and about to get married? Are they working? Are they a single parent? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? And what is of most concern for them in the quality of life category of
right.
Being diagnosed with breast cancer?
Right. And again, I think that's one of my favorite differentiators of ABCD is that it matches people by breast cancer type. Because people with DCIS don't really want to talk to people with stage 4 cancer or stage 3 cancer. And people with stage 3 cancer really don't want to talk to people with DCIS because it doesn't match necessarily the emotions and the stuff that they're dealing with. And then finding somebody who's been through or will go through a similar treatment as you is also incredibly helpful. So ABCD matches on both of those pieces, the medical piece and the emotional life piece. And I think that's a huge differentiator in why ABCD is so incredible. Can you give us a couple of stories of impact? Like who's who, when you answer the phone, who's calling you?
Yeah. Well, and what you were just referring to is the art and the science, or the heart and the science of ABCD.
Yes.
I mean, it's that critical one-to-one connection, the power of one-to-one, which is what Melody talked a lot about. And again, we still use that today. It's the matching on the diagnosis, the treatment, and the stage and age in life. So an example, we often get called by people who are early stagers, people who are in a situation where they are actually given a choice. They have a choice between a lumpectomy, a single mastectomy, a double mastectomy, and then potentially other treatment options that follow. But those are 3 very different cases that all have very different emotional and of course physical outcomes. So people call us and they don't know what to do. They don't know. They're trying to grapple with this life-changing decision and they're overwhelmed, they're scared, they're worried, they have all sorts of questions. We will then get to know that person, find out their specific diagnosis, knowing it's most likely an early stager, and what age they are, what stage in life are they? Because if they're a 29-year-old making those choices, it's a little different than someone who's maybe 72.
Right.
Just a different stage in life. And we will then connect that person with with mentors, if they'd like, mentors who have each made one of those decisions. So that person who's calling us can have a real and honest discussion about why these different people made these decisions. And and more often than not, when those conversations, when we're helping someone like that, that person will then make a decision and then they'll stick with the mentor that was assigned to them at that time.
Very cool.
Another story is we had a woman who called us from Australia. She didn't call us. She reached out to us on a online form, and she was living with metastatic disease. And we matched her with one of our mentors here, who happens to live here in Milwaukee, which is where I'm located, and who was also living with metastatic disease, who was the same age as this woman calling us from Australia. And they had this beautiful match, and it's actually one of our stories that we highlight on our impact story page on our website, if any of your listeners want to read that story in particular. We've had a man who's called us from California, whose wife was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And he felt like he was doing, he had been putting all of his emotional energy into her, into taking care of her. And when he realized that he needed some support, he could not find it in any of her care, of her medical team. And he actually told us that he just felt like he was kind of blown off, that no one took his feelings seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So he tells a story about doing a search for help, at 1:30 in the morning, and landing on our website. He reached out to us. We were in touch with him by that afternoon, and we ended up connecting him to one of our mentors that had the same diagnosis as his wife, the same age and the same stage in life, and the same ethnicity and background, and this connection was one where he was able to have conversations with our mentor that he just couldn't have with his wife.
Right. Right.
He could ask her questions, and she could explain how she handled or dealt with the situation. And for him, he has told us that was a life-changing experience for him,
Sure.
and he was able to
Absolutely.
become a more informed caretaker for care partner for his wife.
Mm-hmm. So that pool of 850 mentors includes men. It includes people of all ages. It includes people of all ethnicities and backgrounds. It includes people with stage 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 cancer. And we haven't thrown out the F word yet, but this is all completely free. It's really incredible because that was important to Melody as well, is that these services remain free to anybody that picks up the phone. So that's really important.
And we haven't said the V word, virtual. So all services are free and virtual, which really sets us apart because there's no in-person requirement. There's there's also no time constraints. You can have a mentor for as long as you need a person. You can have as many mentors as you want. I mean, things change. We want after breast cancer diagnosis to be a very long time. And things change when you're first diagnosed to when you're 3 years out to when you're 10 years out. And, we're here for anyone at any stage, at any time after their diagnosis. And I do want to add on that it's not only our services are free, but they are free for our mentor training is free too.
So my next question was then going to be, how is this good for the participants? You've already nailed that left and right, but it is, again, it's just a way to have your emotional needs met, because I work in healthcare, right? So I can tell you about chemotherapy. I can tell you about radiation. I can tell you about surgery. I can help you recover after those things, but I've never had, an IV needle stuck in my arm that's got chemotherapy pulsing through it. I've never had to make these cancer-related decisions. So it's very different than the support that you would get from a medical team. This is somebody who's walked in your shoes, that has the perspective, that you can ask the questions like, when you got home from work, what did you do? How did you talk to your children? How did you go to work? Did you choose to do this or did you choose to do that? I mean, all of these things that just don't get discussed or helped.
That our mentors and our participants say it's a safe space.
Yes.
It's a space to say all the things that you don't want to, that you don't want to or you can't say to your very caring mother who is, while she's caring for you, she's also very upset for herself because she's caring for a sick daughter. It's all the things that you can't talk to your partner about, that you can't talk to your kids about because you're supposed to be, you're trying to stay engaged in an active, and be an active whatever, fill in the blank. And it's that space that you can just be yourself, and also that person is there just for you.
Just for you.
And
it isn't necessarily affected because they're an outside source that's been through what you've been through. So it's really interesting. So we're going to talk about mentor training in a second, but there are vast benefits for the people that provide the mentoring too, whether they're a support person or whether they're a person that has had breast cancer, male or female. Tell us how mentors have positively benefited from being a mentor for ABCD.
Yeah. So there's research-based evidence that shows that people who give back, who volunteer, who stay engaged in their post-diagnosis stage of life, that it has positive mental health benefits for them. It ensures that they take care of themselves. It ensures that they are making sure that they are mentally and physically strong. I mean, we have heard from story after story from mentors who say this is the best thing that they have done since, as an outcome of a really bad and horrific time in their life.
Right.
That for them, the giving back has meant more to them than any walk or or other type of engagement activity that people can choose to be involved in. We sometimes can't quantify the positive impact that being a mentor has but the anecdotal evidence just continues to prove that it is as good for the person receiving support as it is for someone giving the support.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think a differentiator for this fabulous ABCD programming is that we train our mentors. Ellen, tell us about how the training works.
I'm very proud to share that we now offer training 3 to 4 times a year. Mm-hmm. All of our training is virtual. Very deliberate decision that we made a few years ago, because it used to be in person and people used to travel to Milwaukee, which just limited our reach, limited our impact. Right. And it really actually wasn't necessary any longer given the virtual world that we now live in. Mm-hmm. So if someone wants to become a mentor, they fill out a form. Then they do an interview with our match specialist. And in that interview, we learn about them as a human being. What is their diagnosis? What is their treatment? What was their experience like during their own breast cancer? And then what stage and age in life they were when they were diagnosed, and where are they today? Yep. So a requirement to become a mentor is that you have to be 1 year out of your final treatment. And Leslie, I believe you were part of that. Yep. Putting that
was one of my sticks in the sand, again, because people get done with cancer treatment, whether it's breast or any kind of cancer, and they're like just so glad to be done, and they think they're done. But boy, the learning and the recovery and the reintegration into life in the first year is really surprising and tough for people. So we want our mentors to have been through that, to be able to stable on their feet before they start talking to somebody who's like stuck in the cesspool of cancer hell. Yeah. So that's really an important piece.
The only exception is if you're living with metastatic disease, because as we know, there is no end to treatment if you are living with metastatic disease. Yep. And our pool of metastatic mentors, though, are at a place and space in their life that they've accepted their diagnosis, they've done the work that they need to do mentally to be able to be in a position to support someone else. I should just put on a little caveat that for people who are listening, you might want to become a mentor. If you're on hormone replacement therapy, that's the only exception.
Okay, so tell us about the actual virtual training that people go through now, because it's really cool.
There are 2 required times when you actually have to show up and be present and be in person on Zoom. And during those 2 sessions, the first one is like get to know you, sharing your story, sharing who you are as a person, because that's what mentors do most of the time to kick off a call, is that they just give the facts. They just share who they are. And so we do some rehearsing in that moment. Then they do modular learning. And that is that they have a few videos that are recorded from, you do one, Leslie, actually on Breast Cancer 101. And then we have 2 other modules about how to be a mentor. What does it mean? How do you provide emotional support? How do you listen? How do you share a story about yourself without giving an opinion, without giving medical advice? For me is the big thing that we talk about all the time, that our mentors are trained to say, for me, I felt this. For me, I chose to do this. Because you're not in a position where you're giving our mentors do not give medical advice. Right. They do not give advice about, in terms of tough decisions that have to be made. They are trained to provide a point of view because of their own lived experience.
Perfect.
And then after they do these modules, then we come back together about a week after the first session, and we do some role playing. We do some breakout sessions. We do, we go deeper into the information that they learned online. We have mentors who come on to the call who've been with us for a long time, who are there to answer questions, to give examples of their experiences. And then, truly, after that time, people become mentors. But another difference that we have is that our mentors are very well supported. So when a mentor gets their first match, they talk to a human being, one of our match specialists. They get coached and counseled along the way. There's opportunities for mentors and participants to give feedback about the match. And there's continuing education program that we programs that we provide afterwards so that our mentors feel very well prepared to have to be connected to someone that they don't know. But what they do know is that they have this shared experience that is unlike anything they've had before.
That is really phenomenally amazing. And again, I got a big footprint in the oncology world, and I don't know of anything else like it to the nth degree of everything that ABCD does to support mentors through the education and training, how we match people on diagnosis and who you are and what's important to you. And then the fact that it's just all virtual has helped us now spread from, and then we haven't not mentioned yet, unfortunately, Melody lost her life to breast cancer 10 years after she founded the organization. But at that point, it was very important to her because this needs to spread beyond the borders of the television reach of our local TV channels. And it has now. It's now in Wisconsin, across the United States, and international, just because the world has become so virtual. And that is really, really remarkable because it's interesting no matter where you're from, who you are. Cancer is very universal, but the experiences can be so unique and so personal. So when you can talk to somebody that has had your shoes on, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. What we do is that hyper personalization, and we believe that the power of one-to-one, it makes all the difference.
Yep. And there are times when the participant and the mentor don't necessarily click. So you can call and get say, can I talk to somebody additional? Or I now have another question. I love my mentor, but she has not been through, now I have to make decisions based on something else. Is there somebody else that I can add on to my pile? And that's absolutely okay. All right. So now for the millions of people across the planet who have been affected by breast cancer, whether you are male or female, how can you as an individual get support from ABCD?
Quite honestly, the fastest way is go to abcdbreastcancersupport.org. Click on the very obvious link that says Get Matched. And you'll fill out a very quick form. And that information will be sent to our match specialist, and we will respond to you within 24 to 48 business hours and get you connected. That's one of our other differentiators. There's no wait list. We're easy, and we want to make this as seamless as possible for anyone who's reaching out to us for support, because you need us. You don't want to be filling out a long form. You don't have the time to fill it all out. No.
Yeah, we in healthcare do enough of that to you.
Or you can call us at 1-800-977-4121. Or you can always email us, info at abcdmentor.org. All avenues lead to one of the human beings on our team, and we all know what to do when someone's reaching out to us for support.
And it is an absolute game changer when you can add this level of support, of emotional support, personal care onto your medical team. And I know that the medical professionals that I work with, and I know that as a healthcare provider, as an oncology physical therapist, that it helps me to know that my patient is being supported and all the stuff that we're not going to talk about during your visit. Because if people are less stressed, less anxious, better supported, that they're going to get through their treatment better with better outcomes, and their quality of life is going to ramp up much more quickly when they're finished with treatment. So it is really a critical support piece that ABCD does brilliantly beyond anything else I've ever seen. So cheers to you, Ellen, as the mighty executive director of this fantastic organization. And again, a huge shout out to Melody Wilson-Oldenburg, whose idea and vision has created this spectacular force of goodness. All of this is in the show notes. I'll have it up on the screen here. Our phone number, you can call us, you can email us, you can go right to the website and fill out a form there. If you want to become a mentor, or if you need some kind of support, or somebody in your world, you can tell your kid to call, or your coworker to call. It's all free, and we are here to assist. If you want to support ABCD financially, go to the website and you'll find a link there to support us financially as well. So Ellen, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us for the Recovery Room podcast. I will always end with, treat yourself like you are the most important person on this planet, because you are, and exercise like your life depends on it, because it does. Thank you, Ellen. And thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.